She was full of confidence. She was a professional, but she was also very uplifting. She was very empowering.
Mary Frances Carroll came into this world in 1922 in her hometown of Chicago, an only child who learned quickly how to make the world take notice by making a difference.
She just led the way.
Known to friends and colleagues as Mary Fran, she first made her mark as a woman in a man's world at Northern Trust Bank.
Mary Fran, I think in many respects, was a real pioneer in terms of a woman pioneer in banking.
Yeah, I think she was one of the first 5 officers, women officers of the bank.
Anything other than conventional assets was the purview of Mary Fran. In conventional assets, stocks and bonds and personal real estate, personal property, but everything else was Mary Fran and her team, and that involved private businesses of all sorts, manufacturing companies, service companies, oil and gas properties, timber, agricultural property, I mean, you name it, commercial real estate of all types. And again, that was sort of a man's world in terms of dealing with those properties, but she really did a fantastic job and was very highly regarded at Northern Trust, but also within Chicago banking circles and business circles as well.
She handled it with flair. They used to have, as Phil remembers, a golf outing. And it was for officers of the bank at first. And Mary Fran would show up with her white gloves on and kind of make a statement that, you know, here I am in this men-only role, but I'm doing the right thing. I'm playing my role appropriately. People just loved her for it.
Yeah.
Loved her for it.
Again, as a junior banker, Mary Fran, she was bigger than life. She was direct and outspoken, and in a lot of respects, pretty intimidating.
A Northern Trust client and a need for vision drew Mary Fran to the Sarasota-Manatee area in the mid-'80s. The move marked a new adventure for Mary Fran and a new chapter in a region struggling to decide what next. Mary Fran came ready to help answer the question.
Back in 1983, I owned a company called Agricultural Management Services, and we were managing large agricultural properties across the state. At that time, Continental Illinois Bank was giving management advice to Schrader Manatee Ranch. That was largely a leased operation. There was 35,000 acres, but it was largely leased out to vegetable growers, and there was a little bit of citrus leased, but they did own their own cattle. When Mary Fran retired from Northern Trust Bank, she was retiring to Florida, to Sarasota, and the Eline family asked her if she would act as chairman for their board. And at that time, there was a younger generation of Elines coming in. They were new to the ranch, they were new to business, and they wanted Mary Fran to sort of hold these 6 branches of the family together. I sold my company and merged it into Florida Power and Light, and Mary Fran asked me to come to Schrader Manatee Ranch as the president and later the CEO.
She would bring out voluminous amounts of material about the plan for SMR, and I was astounded because it was a city.
We would have liked to have broken ground a little earlier, but in the late 80s, early 90s, as you recall, there was a slowdown in real estate development generally. And it gave us time to go around all the big ranches in America, from Irvine Ranch to the Howard Hughes Ranch in Nevada, and see what they'd done right and what they'd done wrong. And that was the most valuable exercise we ever did. And we came back and put together a plan for this new town of Lakewood Ranch.
Again, She walked into the room, you knew she was there.
Everyone and their mother came to Mary Fran and said, "We'd like some of your land for free." And one had to judge as to what was good and what was useful and what would benefit a future new town. And of course, when Martha Duffy brought the idea of Out-of-Door Academy, it immediately struck a chord that here is an opportunity to get a first-rate school out at Lakewood Ranch, and it would be the most valuable land gift we could make to our future development.
Her vision gave Out-of-Door Academy roots in Lakewood Ranch. The partnership also gave the community a high-profile spot on the public's education radar.
Yes, Mary Fran always realized that being part of the community was critical. So she was on the board of ARGA, she was on the board of a number of different organizations in Sarasota. She was involved in the Economic Development Council. And of course, that's one pathway to gaining support locally.
Such a unique person. She was really a brilliant business strategist, very long on common sense, and with energy and passion. And when her business career ended, she brought that to our community as well. And I think in many respects, you know, the community was her family.
Mary Fran said to me, "Martha, one thing I've always wanted to do was to go to Disney World." And I said, "Oh, I'll be happy to take you, Mary Fran." So we packed up a picnic and we drove up to Disney World and spent the day there. And she just had the most delightful time.
After growing Lakewood Ranch, Mary Fran's family grew to include the Glen Ridge community in Palmer Ranch.
Mary Frances, wow, she's one of those people that you never forget when you meet Mary Frances. She is, in a sense, one of the kind. She falls under that category.
Jim Cater oversees Glen Ridge.
She was one of my original founders of the Glen Ridge on Palmer Ranch, and I think it's one of the reasons that we're here today.
He asked Mary Fran to join his board of directors.
She was the first lady, and at that time the only lady on our board of directors, and she was asking me whether or not I thought it would work, whether or not the chemistry would work, and I said absolutely.
An invitation that changed both their lives.
We like to say that Mary Frances was sort of the mother of the Glen Ridge. She got involved very early with us, was one of our earliest depositors, had the vision for this campus-style community that would be different than the high-rises that are around town. We ended up naming our skilled nursing facility after her. It's now called the Carroll Center. She had open heart surgery before we opened the building. And we were worried whether or not, you know, she was going to make it through that. And so one of the things I said to the board was, you know, we really ought to honor, not memorialize, but honor Mary Fran with this thing. And they all, I guess, were a little bit worried about whether or not she was going to even survive. And so we named it after her, appropriately so. It's the right thing. And she used to say, I'll give you this quote, she used to say,
"I'm one of the few people," this is bragging terribly, "one of the few people you are going to encounter in the course of your lifetime who has a bridge in one county and a building in another county named after her to which he did not contribute any money."
Today, the Mary Fran Carroll Bridge stretches across the Braden River in Manatee. And last year, ABC 7's Linda Carson recognized Mary Fran as one of the Suncoast's amazing women.
Mary Fran is almost 92 years old. When searching for a retirement community for herself, she learned about plans for Glen Ridge on Palmer Ranch and took over the leadership of the project.
There was not going to be anything that was not quality.
she was a real leader. And it always amazed me how she wouldn't say much, but by her example she led. And that's the best way to lead, for any leader to lead. But when she spoke, people listened. They truly listened. She frequently would not be the first in a debate or a discussion, but she would always weigh in at the appropriate time, and people had a very high degree of respect for her opinion. She flourished wherever she was planted, in whichever organization she was associated with. She would always, like cream, rise to the top. But more importantly, she became a good friend of mine over the 14 years that I knew her.
Mary Fran was so special that we're all different people than they would have been or might have been had we not known her. Her infectious personality, her vivacious character, her interest in other people, and her focus as to what she was about and what we were about made a huge difference. And so Mary Fran Carroll will go down as one of Sarasota's great citizens, and certainly, as far as the Glen Ridge on Palmer Ranch is concerned, she is number one.
She was one of those flamboyant and wonderful characters, and I think it's very appropriate. I think that's terrific.
Mary Fran was larger than life, and one of the things that she did was she could drink you under the table, and you know, she could stand up to anybody.
Her church and business were the things that she was most involved with, most interested in, and so clear-minded, but also amused by the world. And she called herself an Irish politician.
She was sort of like a force of nature. I think one of the CEOs at Lakewood Ranch that succeeded her described her that way. She was a force of nature. You know, you just couldn't say no to her. She was that kind of a person. Just a delight. I like to say she never married, but she was the mother of a lot of organizations. She was certainly the mother of this organization, and I think it's safe to say of Lakewood Ranch.
Mary Fran had a good time, and she had a throaty laugh and just a dominant personality.
She was the epitome of a loyal friend. If she was your friend, she was really your friend. She wasn't just a passing friend. She would do whatever she could to help you.
Mary Fran Carroll's passion and personality helped fill and shape a community void across the region. Today, it's her own absence we feel, but in Mary Fran fashion, we celebrate her memory and raise a glass to the girl from Chicago who took the world by storm, leaving sunnier Florida days in her wake.
I think it's just absolutely grand. I think she would say, oh, I don't deserve it. But I think it's just wonderful because she does deserve it, and she gave Sarasota her best. She's a neat lady.
She was a very spiritual woman, and that was one thing that I think we shared, was our faith. And she always said to me, you know, Martha, God will take me when my work is done. And her work was done. But I see the legacy that will continue to live on in her memory.
Her legacy will live on. And again, I think it's wonderful that Argosy, through this event and this honor, is looking to help further define that legacy and imprint that legacy. So it's wonderful. Thank you to the Argus Foundation.